All right, we're going to go ahead and call the the House Transportation, Highways, Military Affairs Committee for January 23rd to order. Donna, can I please get roll call?
Representative Banks.
Here.
Representative Geringer.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Absent.
Representative McCann. Here. Representative Nicholas.
Absent.
Representative Posey.
Absent.
Representative Tarver.
Here.
Representative Wiley.
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Here.
All right. We
All
have
right,
6
committee.
present. I think we have a quorum.
Thank you, Donna. Committee, everybody in the public, we've got 4 potential bills in front of us. We're going to try to finish up with the EV tax bill. We worked through the bill briefly last meeting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring our 2 favorite tax examiners, fuel tax examiners up here, if you guys don't mind. Wayne and Kim, if you guys would please come forward. Want to open it back up to the committee to see if there is any pressing questions, and let Donna, if you can please let the record reflect that Representative Posey and Representative Nicholas are now here. Committee, we walked through this bill. Are there any burning questions from you for Mr. Hassinger and or Kim on the, I guess we'll just say the structure of the bill, how they're doing this? One thing that I wanted to personally ask, and this is just kind of one of the things that we talked about during the interim, is WYDOT has the authority to collect a tax, but no mechanism in which to do so. And that was a portion of why we developed this bill. So it's not necessarily us instituting a new tax as it is giving you guys the authority to go in and actually collect that with a mechanism. Am I right on that, Mr. Hassinger?
Mr. Chairman? I clearly need help with the microphone. All right. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, yes. This has, the alternative fuels statute went into effect in 2015, and it references electricity, but in 2015, not that big a deal. So this bill actually gives us the structure. It actually identifies who our customer will be, which is the DC fast chargers. And it actually just gives legs to the already existing language that requires us to collect the fuel tax on electricity.
Okay. Just for the record, Wayne, since we're starting a new meeting, can I have you introduce yourself, please? I actually got corrected by my vice chairman, so it's a good thing I got him next to me.
You bet, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Wayne Hassinger, Fuel Tax Administration at WYDOT.
Thank you.
And this is Kimberly Peters, brain trust behind Fuel Tax Administration at WYDOT.
All right, thank you very much. Committee, is there any other questions for either one, Kim or Wayne? Okay. And then Donna, if you can also let the record reflect Representative Larson is in attendance now. All right. Seeing no further discussion from the committee, I do appreciate you bringing it back up there. That was one of the burning questions, and more of I just wanted to make sure I remembered that correctly as we were going through the interim. That was one of the biggest issues that we were trying to correct is you guys have the authority. It's just how we get there. And so I appreciate you clarifying that for us.
Mr. Chairman, one additional thing is what this bill also does is it standardizes the measurement we're supposed to tax on. As the existing statute references the gasoline gallon equivalent, which again in 2015 was the idea of how to do it. Since then, kilowatt hours has become the standard. And so it makes it much cleaner for us to administer the tax on a kilowatt hour. So it does provide us that as well.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you very much and appreciate all your work during the interim. So we're going to see, is there any other government entities interested in testifying on this? Clear over from Sublette County. All right. Well, welcome. Ms. Parvasini, please introduce yourself to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Emily Parvasini, Sublette County Treasurer. And I have spoken on this bill before, that the Treasurers Association is in favor of a hybrid fee to help recover some of those gas tax fees that we're losing out on because a car that's a hybrid plug-in can go up to 4,000 miles or so on a tank of gas, which, as we all know, gosh, it'd be great if all of our gas engines went that far, but that is not the case. And I would stand for any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Parvasini or the treasurers? Representative Nicholas.
I don't have a question. My hybrid goes 20 miles, and I drive from Lander to here very regularly, so I don't get much out of my hybrid.
Mr. Chairman, you have a plug-in hybrid that runs on both gas and electricity, and you plug it in at night?
His doesn't plug in. We had this discussion. Yours doesn't plug in. It does plug in. I thought you said yours didn't.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, you need a different car.
Agreed. Any other questions for Ms. Parvasini? Seeing none, thank you. And
Thank
hope the
you,
roads
Mr.
were in good
Chairman.
condition for you
They
coming
weren't
all the
too
way over.
bad.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right, any other government entities? Seeing none, Representative Yin, thank you for waiting patiently. We'll bring you forward.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So members of House Transportation, I worked with the interim committee. I mean, by work with, I mean I showed up and testified many times to the interim committee when this bill was being drafted the first time around, less so the second time around. But in general, I would say I'm pretty much in favor of it. I think the committee did generally a lot of good work to make sure that it tried to stay fair and equitable. There are a couple of things where I think that it does need to be balanced in the same level of a gasoline-powered car. And so I have a proposed amendment that I distributed that you guys should have. It's an LSO drafted amendment, and I can explain that if you guys all have it in front of you. It has my name at the very bottom. It's Prop 24 H1 601. So members, all the page one stuff on that is just conforming for the types of amendments that I have below that. The first amendment I have is on page 2, line 17, and that's to replace the $200 with $100. So members, the argument here is that for EVs and for plug-in hybrids, they can do their daily commute every single day based on just charging at home, right? So they charge at home. The EVs aren't paying a gas tax. They aren't paying taxes on those, except for sales tax on the electricity that they pay for. The same with the plug-in hybrids. So plug-in hybrids also are just using the electricity that they have at home. They're paying sales tax on it, but they aren't paying gas tax on those plug-in hybrids. But once you get outside of that commute range, the plug-in hybrids are using gasoline, right? So they're paying gas tax when they get outside of the commute range and they're doing long-term travel. That's the same thing with the EVs. They're going to start paying this EV tax once they do long-term travel, long-range travel. So traveling from Jackson to Cheyenne, for example, you're going to go hit those DC fast chargers and you're going to pay the EV tax. And so the $100 change puts it on the same level as the plug-in hybrids because that's essentially the same reasoning for both, right? To have that $100 fee to make up for the gas tax when they charge at home. But when they travel, both of them are paying use taxes when they travel. The second part, so page 2 after line 21, we have this language where it adds an exemption. So the exemption is required to make it fair with gas taxes. So right now, gas taxes are exempt from all sales taxes. If you don't have this exemption in, an EV driver will pay both the EV tax that we're now putting in the bill and sales tax, while a gas-powered car doesn't pay the sales tax. So the exemption just makes that fair for both EV drivers and for gas-powered drivers. And then the page 7, line 3 amendment, this is just, and this is just a little bit of nitpicking because, for example, you go to a gas pump, the display is electronic display, right? And so I just wanted to make sure that we're not requiring physical signage, that a display of the actual price is okay. whether it's electronic or physical. And those are the only three changes. I would be totally in favor of the bill and even sell the bill on the floor with all of those changes on board. So that's my testimony. Happy to answer any questions about the structure of the bill as well. I'm very aware of all the changes that were put in it over the interim. But I'm pretty happy with the structure that we have.
Representative Yin, for the record, can I have you just introduce yourself for the
Oh,
everybody else as well?
my apologies, Mr. Chairman. I am Representative Yin. I'm from House District 16. That represents the county that probably has the most per capita EV owners in the state.
Awesome, thank you, Representative Yin. Representative Larson, did you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, I do. On the EV, the high, you talked about the importance of it being equitable. Is the rate we're charging on the fast charges, I think it's like 4 cents. Do you think that's equitable across the board?
Representative Yin.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Larson, it's a little bit of a balance. So it is more than what is paid in gas tax. If you do the calculation on a per mile basis, even with the most efficient gasoline car or the least efficient gasoline car, it's paying a bit of a higher rate on that. The reason for that is because it only charges tax on the DC fast chargers. It doesn't charge tax on a lot of these slow chargers where you could have a workplace or a home charger that isn't networked at all and frankly would be really hard to measure. So it's more of a balance to try to get on average kind of the same amount on a per person basis.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up.
So if you had a vehicle that couldn't use slow chargers, so let's go to hauling freight or a truck that doesn't do that, then they have to bear the burden of those who have the capacity to use slow chargers, if I understand correct. And so I'm trying to take me through this equity thing.
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Larson, I think you are correct in that really the thought behind a lot of the structure of it was really towards more personal vehicle charging rather than industrial vehicle usage, for sure.
Mr. Chairman, so
Follow-up?
did you think of any amendments in your equity amendment? Did you think of any amendments that might be a potential to help that out?
Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, I have not, but I know that there are some industry folks here who might have amendments, and I'm happy to work with the committee on amendments on the floor, because I think that's important for sure. If we want to incentivize businesses, regardless of what type of vehicle they want to use, being in the state, I think it's important to make sure that they're taxed fairly, for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any further questions for Representative Yin? Yes, Vice Chairman.
Representative Yin, let's just throw some numbers out there. What would be the low side that you would support? 2, 3? How low can you see this going and you still support it?
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Yin.
thank you. Vice Chairman Tarver, low on which part? On the rate or? Mr. Chairman, I would support most rates. I think 4 is probably already high because there was a member in the interim committee that actually preferred the higher range of that. I'm trying to remember what the average rate would be if you set it on exactly a per mile rate matching the gas tax. I'd be generally in support of just creating the structure in there. And then if we want to have an overhaul on the use taxes of our roads in general, we could do more work on how we equalize them. But I'm in favor of the structure of the bill as current.
Okay. Any further questions for Representative Yin? Minority Floor Leader Yin, my apologies. Seeing none, thank you so much. We're going to open this up for public comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to testify on this? Mr. Moline, please come forward. And then I do see we have Ms. Cox online as well. If you can start the process of letting her in, we'll bring her on as soon as Mr. Moline is done. Mr. Moline, please introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau. My members do have policy that would support this bill in order for them to essentially equivalent to a fuel tax. So trying to be brief, Farm Bureau sits in support of this bill. With that, I would take any questions you or the committee may have for me.
Appreciate that, Brett. Thank you for the brevity there. Any questions for Mr. Moline? Seeing none. Thank you. And do we have Ms. Cox in? Ms. Cox, welcome.
Hello, Chairman Brown and members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is Alicia Cox, and I am Executive Director of a Wyoming-based nonprofit, Yellowstone Teton Clean Cities. We serve Eastern Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, and work to support energy, financial, and environmental security through advanced transportation fuels, vehicles, technologies, and systems. I appreciate this moment to comment on House Bill 24, and I hope it moves through, as I know the committee has been working on this for some time, and it sets a good framework. Also, I want to acknowledge the importance of capturing road fees from Wyoming electric vehicle owners, as well as those traveling through Wyoming in an electric vehicle from out of state. I have a few points to bring to your attention to make the bill a bit more fair and equitable, as Representative Yin was mentioning as well. The current bill will actually charge an in-state electric vehicle owner 2 to 3 times as much as someone with a comparable gasoline vehicle, as the electric vehicle owner will pay that upfront electric vehicle fee when they at time of registration, and then they will pay at the charging station throughout the year this proposed tax. So, and those who will be paying up to 3 times more in taxes and fees from a gasoline vehicle are some of the lower income EV owners who live in apartments and condos and do not have access to at-home charging. So they'll be doing all of their charging at public stations, and then also paying that upfront EV fee. So additionally, a plug-in hybrid vehicle owner will hardly ever drive through enough in a year on their gasoline engine to warrant the $100 electric fee. I personally own a PHEV, and I have for 10 or 11 years now. I only drive about 7,000 miles a year, and about half of that is on gasoline. So if I were taxed at the gasoline tax rate, I would actually only owe an additional $16 in fees. So you can look at this many different ways, such as the amount of gasoline a gasoline vehicle pays per mile versus an EV pays per mile. And no matter how you calculate it, the current bill still taxes Wyoming residents twice for the same thing. And in some cases, as I mentioned before, it could be as much as 3 times as much. So I'm in agreement with Representative Yin of changing that EV annual fee from $200 to $100 to accommodate that. And I'd also like to recommend changing the plug-in hybrid annual fee from $100 to $50 to accommodate the fact that those vehicles drive significantly less. And yeah, and then I would also like to suggest creating an exemption from the EV annual fee for EV owners without home charging. So they will be, the way that they'll be contributing to the road taxes through those public charging station EV tax. And with that, I will end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alicia. Committee, any questions for Ms. Cox? Yellowstone Clean Cities? Seeing none, thank you so much for joining us today. Mr. McNiven, I believe you were headed up here. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Travis McNiven here on behalf of NU. As in summary, as we look at the nation and the transportation system around the country, as we look out, in the next, decade, the gap with EV diesels, semis, is basically between Chicago, if you will, and the California ports, the Southern California market. The East Coast has, more and more infrastructure, as does California for varying reasons, but it's that gap. And we feel that I-70 and I-80 are the two most logical routes for this industry to grow on. But, potentially both may not be needed. And so we feel like I-80 is a superior route. And with the EV charging stations that would need to be particularly on I-80, along with that would come things, like your restaurants, your C-stores, your mechanics, your supporting structure, jobs, entertainment, the things that would need to go along with supporting that industry as it comes. And so with that in mind, as was spoke about earlier, we're just looking at kind of the gas gallon equivalent. There is a handout, Mr. Chairman, that I provided to the committee. At the top, it says internal combustion versus electric semi per mile comparison that I will very briefly run down. Everyone, as we know, diesel tax 24 cents, average semis, you come to about 3.7 cents per mile. Looking at electric semis with based on kilowatt hours, that breaks down under this bill at 4 cents a kilowatt. They would be paying 8 to 10 cents per mile. And so that would be, if you reverse that, that would be a gas equivalent of 52 cents a gallon. Now, to be completely, fair, we've adjusted for weight. Electric trucks under a federal 2019 law can carry an extra ton, and so that's from 40 to 41 tons. And that 2.5% difference. I'm not an engineer. There are probably those on the committee who know more, or certainly YDOT, about what's known as the fourth power rule as far as weight and impacts to highways. And so that 2.5% would need to be adjusted to a 10% increase to again get kind of a comparison. That would lead us to, as the handout shows, roughly 1.65 to a little over 2 cents a kilowatt hour to make it. And so the proposed amendment that I would bring before the committee today and ask for favorable consideration would be simply on page 7, line 19, to strike that 4 cents and insert 2.5 cents, kind of coming up a little bit there. With that, I would certainly be happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McNiven. Any questions for Mr. McNiven? Representative Larson, please.
Thank you, Mr. McNiven, or whomever. When this being a little foreign to me, Mr. Chairman, I'm curious, when they set up these fast chargers in the scenario that you point out, I'm thinking of stopping in at any place that I currently get fuel along the interstate, and you can get your gasoline, you can get your diesel, kind of, and depending on the type of vehicle it is. But if you've got an electric vehicle that's going to that would use a fast charger, and you have a truck that uses a fast charger, is that the same beast? Would they be able to use the same thing? And the reason for my question is, as I'm trying to differentiate, Mr. Chairman, if there is as we mull this over a little bit, if there's a need to look at perhaps a different tax structure with the diesel or the size of truck versus an automobile or a passenger vehicle, and I'm fishing for some help to
Mr. McNiven, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Larson, thank you for the question. My understanding is that on a fast, there's different types of plug-in technologies, adapters, if you will. And so however that truck charging was, the adapters, it just doesn't mean that a Tesla could roll in and it's just one universal, plug-in type of thing. There's different adapters. But to your point of, rolling into a current truck stop or whatnot, what this would most likely look like, Representative Larson, would be a dedicated in Wyoming, we believe that Wyoming, or I-80 in particular, across Wyoming would need 4 of these sites, roughly every 100, 125 miles, where you would have dedicated truck parking, those truck chargers, and then you need additional parking because if a truck was, charging for their hour and then, the drivers are on rest for 4 or something like that, and they need to be able to pull out of that charging spot and park in a traditional regular spot. And so with that, there is an added benefit of, besides kind of the microeconomy that would create, of course, as we know in I-80, when things close, the private sector may add some additional parking stalls, every 100 miles or so across I-80. So there's the adapters would be probably different for trucks and semis, and then create separate adapters for passenger vehicles.
Follow-up, please.
But I guess my conclusion from your comments would be, go to the trunk and dig out your adapter, but your adapter is probably going to be a universal adapter into the fast charger. And on the other end of that is going to be the type that your particular vehicle takes, whether it be a car, whether it be a truck. What I was trying, and I think, Mr. Chairman, and you could maybe help me here, is that charger, regardless, is the same. It's just the adapter to fit your vehicle that would be different. And so, thank you, because I think that we would see that the cars and the trucks, regardless, would use the same fast charging type apparatus and wouldn't really make a difference in the per kilowatt hour. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Yin also looks like he might be able to
Please.
assist here, so.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Representative Larson. I'm unfortunately not super educated on what semis or other large, whether it's a bus or a semi-truck, would use. But I do know that it would likely be using chargers that the personal vehicles wouldn't necessarily use, because they would be even more both higher voltage and higher amperage, which would mean higher powered chargers than even the personal vehicles would use, because they have a larger battery pack, and so they can actually accept more power at the same charger. So they would probably, we could figure out maybe a category that only semi-truck trailers would use that could be appropriate.
I'm seeing Mr. Hassinger shaking his head back there. That's because he was able to read that J1772 book all the way through. So I think he knows exactly what we're referring to here. Committee, any other questions for Mr. McNiven?
Yes.
Yes, Representative Geringer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as I understand it then, the amendment that you're asking for to strike the 4 cents and insert the 2.5 cents, Mr. McNiven, that would apply not just to semi-trucks, so that would apply across the board to the other vehicles, correct?
Mr. McNiven?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Geringer, that is correct. As the bill is drafted, this would apply to all type level 3 chargers.
And one of the discussions that we did have during the interim is parity in tax structure, making sure that we're staying with the same level of taxation across the board to stay constitutional. On that was a discussion that we had. I want to say that was in Laramie in our last meeting before we sponsored the bill as well. So there was some discussion. You'll also see there was, if you go back and watch that committee meeting, there was some discussion that 3.5 cents captures the difference that Representative Larson is talking about at the higher usage for some of these semis. And then capturing it at a higher rate up to 4 cents was what the committee had requested to do. When we start to work this bill, we can certainly amend as the committee sees fit. So, Mr. McNiven, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further public testimony on House Bill, what are we on? 24. Seeing none, we will close the bill and public comment and bring the bill back to the dais. Committee, what is your pleasure? Move the bill, Representative Nicholas, seconded by Representative Banks. Committee, let's work this bill top to bottom really quick. I feel like that's probably going to be the easiest. We have some proposed amendments, and if anybody would like to move those as presented or pieces of, we can do that. But let's start with page 1, moving into page 2. Any changes for page 2? This is the annual decals. Seeing no motions there, we'll move on to page 3. Page 3, moving on to page 4. Seeing nobody making any motions there, we'll move into page 5. There wasn't a proposed amendment, I believe, from the department on page 5, if I remember correctly. I'm trying to dive into my notes. It's actually on page 6, page 5, line 22, and page 6. Committee, I would entertain a motion on the YDOT memo if anybody's interested in that. That just updates the language to be more appropriate and more adaptive, I would say.
The amendment as presented.
So, and I think we talked about that. I
Please, thank you.
apologize, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And I think we talked about that language at our last meeting at the end,
That's correct.
right?
Yep.
So I'd make that motion.
Okay, so we had moved by Geringer and seconded by Representative Larson. Any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That amendment has been adopted. Donna, do you have that one for the record?
I do have that.
Okay.
handout. Uh-huh.
All right. Representative Larson, please.
My good colleague here woke me up, and I'd like to go back to page 3 if I may.
Certainly, back to page 3.
And we talked about this last week there a little bit, just trying to clean the language up so it's applicable to the type of vehicles that we're using on line 19, which is existing language, but striking the term tank and inserting new language system. When we're looking at in my rationale, Mr. Chairman, I'll explain if there's a second.
Seconded by Representative Nicholas. Representative Larson, please.
We use this term as a fuel supply tank, which we all get, particularly if you're my age. But when we start talking about recharging, there's not a tank. And so I was trying to think of the right word, and I just thought a fuel supply system. We can consider electricity as the fuel. And so that's it's a little thing.
Okay, committee, and for Donna, page 3, line 19, striking the words tank and inserting system. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That amendment has been adopted. Back to page 6, as we were moving through there. We have adopted the page 6 amendment. Anything else on page 6, committee? Seeing none, moving on to page 7.
Mr. Chairman, did we get, on page 7, I think that there was there a need to strike on page 7, line 4, to strike kilowatt hour and insert unit of measurement?
That is correct. That was going to be my next
Could I
recommendation.
make that motion?
You certainly can.
Thank you.
Moved by Larson, seconded by Geringer. Donna, that is also on the sheet provided by the department. Committee, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That has been adopted.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Representative Larson, please.
coming down to kind of the meat of this, our conversation since I showed up late, was what is the true, is it 2.5? We've heard that 4 was perhaps a little inflated. We've heard the true number is, and we've heard 2.5 coming from industry. We've heard 3. Where do we get God? Where do we find the truth on this?
So committee.
And Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I shouldn't say truth. What is the actual number? I'm being a little facetious. I apologize.
I think the situation at hand is there's probably not really any direct truth or exact number that we could utilize on this. We heard a lot of testimony that the number that was presented to us and was originally going to be adopted was 3.5 by the committee. That was moved to 4 by a senator during joint committee meeting. I think the kind of the feeling of the committee during the interim work was 3. to 3.5, I would entertain any type of a motion, and chances are we will likely have discussion of this out on the floor as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Larson.
would you mind if we just, Director, does that fit what your folks have been telling us?
Director, you thought you could get out of this one?
Mr. Chairman, Darren Westby, Director, Wyoming Department of Transportation. Thank you for the question. I think there was a lot of conversation, if you remember, during the interim on calculations, and you're depicting it right. I think we were landing on the gas equivalent in that 3 range. I think some of the conversation throughout the interim did some compensation to allocate those level 2 chargers that, I mean, throughout the interim, there was a lot of discussion about level 2s and getting an annual fee because they're not metered. And so I think some of that negotiation was to get it to 4. Some of our consternation, and I think you alluded to it in some of your question, is and I think, Mr. Chairman, you talked a little bit about how do we get this tax, and how do we ensure that the commercial vehicle is going to be taxed at this rate and the passenger vehicles are going to get at this rate? And is there a delineation between what can be plugged in? We were talking in the hall is on a commercial vehicle parking lot, if we have, a bunch of electric vehicle passenger cars lining up and the interaction with that, how does that work? And I think there's a lot of technology that could probably help us out with collection of that tax, and if there was a differentiation. But the simple, easy button would one price per kilowatt hour, and that would eliminate that. But there's always the possibility to cleanly collect that tax if there was a differentiation.
Follow up, and then to Representative Nicholas.
So your backroom boys that are really smart are saying what?
What?
What is that accurate equivalent? Is it 3 cents? Is that what it is?
3.
3, okay.
Mr. Chairman, Representative 3.
When Dennis stands up, we listen.
Chairman, I'm just curious if the backroom boys listen to country music very much. The,
Representative Nicholas, please.
So my question is, have other states done this? And what do other states charge? And more particularly their surrounding states, because, our preference is that they don't drive through Wyoming without stopping if they're going to get better rates on either side of us.
Mr. Chairman, I'm the chairman. You're the director. Mr. Director, this takes us back to the very beginning of this discussion. If you have that information readily available, or if you need to phone a friend, you're more than welcome to.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I definitely will have to phone a friend. I didn't bring my interim book with me, but yes, we talked through a lot of what the other states were charging. I know the state to the south, I don't believe charges any type of tax on their electricity for one reason or another, but I'd have to phone a friend to get a little bit more information if you want more of that, or we can definitely present that to you in written form after this meeting.
Might be a good idea to just get some of that information over to the committee. What I can tell you from recollection is that vast majority of states, there are a lot of them are doing this. This is about the only way to do it with parity. Ranges anywhere from 2 cents per kilowatt hour. We would have been the highest at 4. So it all kind of falls into that 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour is pretty much the standard across the country. Mr. McNiven had also said what you see is the states with the interconnectivity on the East Coast and the West Coast is where you see the majority of this taking place. The majority of the states' interconnectivity in the Midwest do not. We just don't see the infrastructure in place at this point. So, Representative Gallagher.
Motion to move it to 3.
We'll entertain that motion here in just a second then. Perfect. Representative Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Director, walk me through, when we have something that is a flat rate, whether it's a fuel tax that's a flat rate or a per kilowatt hour that's a flat rate, how does that work when the cost of, I guess my point is we tend to set this as a flat rate, but yet it doesn't account for the cost increases on the maintenance of our roadways. And so in effect, does this per kilowatt hour, maybe even if it is at 3 cents or it's at 4 cents, maybe that is in a little excess. There's a lot of discussion. The committee chose to set it at 4 cents despite having the 3 cents. So does this give us any room for, am I looking at this wrong? I guess is my question to you. Am I looking at this wrong, that this really only looks at this point in time and doesn't account for future costs that this is actually intended to help?
Mr. Director, I think to try to pull you back from having to go into the details of why we were asking for hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for YDOT, the answer to your question is yes, you're looking at exactly a moment in time.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, thanks for the question. And yes, there is a need. The need is there. Not going back into a whole lot of the conversation over the last probably 10 years when we started talking about fuel tax, of trying to figure out a way to index it, to your point, right? How do we index it to ensure that as something goes up, the revenues go up? The negative to that indexing on price per gallon of fuel versus gallon of fuel is gas prices go down too. So we could see the negative. When prices go down, the vehicle miles go up, which means we have more potential damage to the road. So on that indexing, it's a little bit difficult. What an indexing on an electric vehicle, another per unit thing, is if it could be indexed to the fuel price. It would be another idea to at least to where if we go after in the future a fuel tax increase, we don't have to make sure that all other units, so if it could be tied back, that would be one potential indexing on the electric vehicle side, that if we just go after a fuel tax, everything else follows, would be an idea. I haven't worked that through, it just popped in from an indexing perspective.
Yes, Vice Chairman.
Director, I hate to even ask this question, but are we designed to tie this into IFTA? I mean, is IFTA going to work right along with this?
Director, that's something I don't know that we actually, I do remember us briefly touching base on IFTA, but I don't know that they are tied in with IFTA on electrical.
Mr. Chairman, I would not be the person to ask, but I can get you that information on that tie back to IFTA, and if even electric vehicles is tied into that. I probably have somebody in the room, but I'd rather work that really quick and then jot an email out to you guys just on that clarity.
I am not seeing Sheila, but I am seeing Wayne. Wayne, do you want to join us? You really do relish in these meetings, don't you?
I'll do anything I can to get up here. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, although fuel tax at YDOT does not do IFTA, Motor Vehicle Services Program does, we have a lot of cross communication, and IFTA nationally is addressing the electricity and how they will warehouse that information and act as if it is fuel. And it actually came to us because we do not current kilowatt hours as the measurement, and we are the only state in the IFTA world that doesn't use kilowatt hour. So they were asking us, can you get that changed to kilowatt hour? Because they are nationally trying to address the situation. So it's an on-point question for sure.
Excellent, thank you, appreciate that. Committee, we're going to come back and we're going to finish working the bill. Thank you, Director, thank you, Wayne. Committee, I'll entertain any motions at this point for changing of this.
I move it. Drop it to 3.
3 cents. Moved by Nicholas, seconded by Larson. Committee, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
All right, that has passed. Representative Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose another amendment that allows the tax to be adjusted commensurate with the percentage of fluctuation you see in a gallon of diesel. And I've been noting that, so we see the price of gas and diesel go up or down, as he noted. We ought to have the ability to do the same with the costs on electricity and tie it to what our road fuels are. And so I picked diesel, I don't care if it's the other, but if it goes up 2% and maybe we have it that it stays at that rate for up or down for a period of weeks, that then your electrical price would fluctuate to reflect that. Again, does that just make life too complicated?
Is there a second? See if there's any discussion on that. Not, okay, so, thank you. Yep, so, just trying to make sure we stay in line with here. Yes, Vice Chairman Tarver.
Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, are we using a percentage now to tax our gases? Well, I feel this isn't needed.
Representative Larson.
Fair enough in that, but we see gas prices go up, gas prices go down. This is going to stay, this is in statute that it stays there.
Mr. Chairman. So what I would say is we are attempting at this point with the bill as currently written is to find parity with our fuel tax. That was the impetus behind this. That's my preference
Just based on
personally.
the tax.
Just based on the tax, but that is also just my preference. The committee can certainly weigh their way through. Representative Geringer on the amendment.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you're echoing the thoughts in my head, I guess. It's, I don't like the idea of treating this class one way and not taking care of the rest. I think that discussion should be had, but on a broader scale.
I withdraw.
Okay, motion has been withdrawn. Second, okay, all right. Committee, let's finish working the rest of this bill. We're getting close here. Down through page 8. That is just conforming language, as well as page 9, 10, on to 11. This is a recommendation on page, oh, I'm sorry, we missed 7. Representative Yin's page, or amendment on page 7 had delete a sign stating. Anybody want to move that?
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Geringer, seconded by Tarver. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, that motion passes. Back down to 11, my apologies, I was looking for that in the wrong place. We have the repealer here. This is some outdated language that is really not necessarily included in this bill, but it was a good idea to go ahead and clean it up. Section 3 is immediate effective. On to page 12, we have everything else going in on July 1st, 2025. Still good with that date, Director? Seeing a head shake, everything looks good there. Okay. Committee, any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Donna, can you please, oh,
Just a question.
yes, Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On section 3, so it doesn't state, so the department has until 26 to get the rules promulgated, but they can start now?
So they can start the rules on July 1st, 2025.
Okay.
And then 1 and 2 are effective 2026.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Donna, can you please call roll on House Bill 24 as amended?
Roll call vote on House Bill 24 as amended, alternative fuel tax electricity amendments. Representative Banks?
Aye.
Representative Geringer?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative McCann? Representative Nicholas? Representative Posey? Representative Tarver?
Aye.
Representative Wiley left an absentee vote of aye. Chairman Brown?
Aye.
We have 9 aye, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, I will floor sponsor this to start out with. Is there anybody who wants to back clean up for me out there? Anybody feel comfortable? Okay. Co-chairman or vice chairman here. All right. Committee, thank you for your hard work on that one. That one's a heavy lift. A lot of work in there. Basically 2 full years worth of interim work, and appreciate you guys working on that and cleaning that up. We're going to move right into House Bill 23. Misty, I don't see that I ever get the same level of excitement that I get out of Wayne, but welcome back. Misty, what I'd like to do with this one, it's a fairly I hate to say this, loud, but I'm going to knock on wood here. Fairly simple bill, and the intent behind it is simple. However, it is a little long for a simple bill. So if I can have you walk behind the impetus and then briefly walk us through the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Brown. Members of the committee, my name is Misty Zimmerman. I am the program manager at White House Driver Services. Chairman Brown, you are correct. You took the words out of my mouth. It is a simple bill, but it's lengthy. As we walk through our modernization project, this is one of the first things that came up. The statutes that are currently out there that say for certain citations, the police officer or law enforcement officer is physically supposed to take that credential from the person, the driver's license. Now, today, the technology does that. We all know that a driver's license is in fact valid and only as good at this very time that it is issued. Anything could happen at any point after that. So law enforcement needs to be able to, and can now, rely on the technology. They run the driver's license, they see if the person is eligible or not, or if they're licensed, and so on and so forth. So as we walked through our modernization project and we found some of these antiquated statutes, it created the opportunity to remove that requirement for law enforcement to take that from the individual, return it to the department holds on to it, and then if it becomes valid after the period of suspension or cancellation or revocation, then turn around and send it back to the constituent. So quite a lengthy process, requires a lot of administrative time. We have it's like a card catalog in our basement in the office that we actually hold all of these. We go through them, we monthly, weekly, whatever it is, send them back if necessary, destroy them if they're not valid any longer, or if something has changed in the requirement of their license. So it's a lot of unnecessary work. That card is just that, a card, right? It doesn't give you the right to drive or the privilege to drive. It is in fact just a card, right? That privilege maintained in the system and the technology itself is able to tell that. So that's the reasoning behind it, and then I'll walk through this here quickly. On page 1 just simply goes over the bill itself. Page 2 starts with our implied consent chapter. During an implied consent or stop, a person is given, if they are over the 0.08 or 0.02 for a youthful, they're given what is now a temporary license, because this is one of the instances where you take that license. So we remove the requirement of issuing a temporary license in this instant and outlined that the notice given shall be the person's notice of suspension, which occurs 30 days after the offense date. So as you look at page 2, lines 5 through 23, we basically just remove every reference to temporary license and ensure that the notice is provided to the person at the time of the offense. Specifically on lines 15 and 16, we add the 30 days after the date, because the original temporary was a 30-day temp, and so we needed to make sure that we got, which was outlined in a separate section that's repealed, and we needed to make sure we did get that 30 days in there for the commencement of the suspension to start. On page 3, basically, all the way through, there's conforming language starting on line 3. Line 12, where we LSO remove the word demand and its request. And that's regarding the hearing process that we actually talked about last week as well. And then also, we talked about the request from the department, which was additional language that we talked about in last week's bill as well. So that's what page 3 does. On page 4, lines 9 through 13, so this is the section where it talks about, and the driver's license shall be surrendered, so that's deleted from the existing language. Starting on line 15, this is the implied consent law for youthful. So what we've done is we've just mirrored the 316102 and 316108 here. And again, same thing, removing of that requirement to issue the temporary license and making clear that the notice shall be effective 30 days after the issuance from law enforcement. That continues all the way through on line 5. That should mirror 102 completely. Where we get a little bit different here is, as we reviewed the statute, 316108 did not have the requirement for the officer signed statement that is sent in with the paperwork. And so we mirrored the language from 316102 to match 316108 for the youthful offender. That takes you through the page, all the way through page 6. On page 7, Under the fees section, on line 3, we deleted the reference to 317131E, which is repealed by this bill. That's the temporary license. Nothing else on page 7. On page 8, line 4 and 5, again, deleting the reference to the temporary license or the requirement for the law enforcement officer to take the license for certain offenses in 31512K or 1205K. Going on to page 8, and then, and this is one specifically, so on the bottom of page 8, the return of license and registration to the division, this talks about returning the license and the registration for insurance for the purposes of not being insured. This is in the insurance section of it. So all references to license were removed from that. They're still required to take the license plate, the registration piece of it. And then also remove the penalty on page 9, under 319106 for the license, again, removing license from that. Section 2 is the repealed statutes, and I can go through those really quickly if the committee would like. Okay. So in 8.1.102A, Romanet 12, no, 17? 17, yay. Removes the definition of surrender for the purposes of driver license and identification cards out of the definition section. 31.5.1205K is removing the requirement to surrender the license to a peace officer for certain violations. 31.7.131 also removes the requirement to surrender and return the license to the department. 31.7.133A, Romanet 4, removes failure to surrender for suspension, revocation, cancellation from the unlawful use of license statute. And then 31.7.138 is actually the provision that outlines our temporary license. The remaining sections just provide for the department to promulgate and puts an effective date of July 1, 2025, and the department is okay with that on that one.
Thank you, Misty. Really appreciate that. A lot of quick information there. Committee, any questions for Ms. Zimmerman on this particular bill? I will say that one of the things that did come up during interim is this bill, plus she just mentioned that we had discussed the bill that we passed last week out to the floor. They were originally going to be all one bill. However, there was some concern with single subject. And so we, as a committee, split them up to be single subject. And that's why you're seeing very similar changes, but they're just being brought in different bills. So any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Misty. Oh, yes.
Chairman Brown, I would have one recommendation or consideration for the committee.
Please.
On page 8, I think we just missed this during the process, line 21, the title of the statute is Return of License and Registration to the Division, and we removed out all references of license. We just did not remove it out of the title of the statute, so I would recommend that we
That's a good catch.
make that change.
Excellent. We will work that in. Committee, anything else? Seeing none? Thank you, Misty. Open this up for any other government entities. Any? Seeing none, and we'll have no other elected officials. Any public comment on this bill? Welcome back. Alan, if you'd please introduce yourself for the committee and for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Alan Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of WASCOP, which is the Chiefs and Sheriffs Association. I just wanted to mention briefly that our organization, by and large, supports this measure. It's a kind of an unneeded process in today's day and age. We don't see that it would negatively affect the processing of DUIs, and if anything, it shortens the list of many things that we have to accomplish during a DUI investigation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any, Mr. Chairman.
I hear a chuckle and the light turned on. Representative
Well, no,
Nicholas.
just, my question is, you said by and large, what you don't like about it? Because that, by and large, means you don't like something.
By and large means our membership.
Thompson.
I haven't heard from everyone, Mr. Chairman. So our membership component, by and large, supports this. Thank you.
He's a lawyer. Give him a break. Committee, any further questions for Mr. Thompson? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any further public testimony? Seeing none, we'll close public testimony, bring the bill back to the dais. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Nicholas, seconded by Geringer. Any discussion? Well, let's move the one amendment. Thank you. Representative Larson?
I would, Mr. Chairman, on page 8, line 21, make a motion to delete license and from that sentence.
Seconded by Representative Nicholas. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. Any further? Question being called. Donna, can you please take roll on House Bill 23 as amended?
Roll call vote on House Bill 23 as amended, surrender driver's license repeal. Representative Banks?
Aye.
Representative Geringer?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative McCann? Representative Nicholas? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Aye. Okay. Representative Posey? Representative Tarver?
Aye.
Representative Wiley, left an absentee vote of aye, and Chairman Brown.
Aye.
We have 9 aye, Mr. Chairman.
Who wants the easy hitter?
I hear Wiley does.
Okay, Wiley has been voluntold, and Representative Banks will take second on that. All right. Poor Wiley. That's what you get for leaving this committee early. Just remember that. All right. On to House Bill 27. Misty, welcome back. This might be probably the easiest bill we will get. I say that and I just cursed everything. Ms. Zimmerman, please.
Chairman Brown, members of the committee, again, Misty Zimmerman, Wyoming Driver Services. This bill is pretty straightforward. Currently, right now, our permanent placards have a 10-year expiration date on them, which, because of supply, we sometimes issue a permanent placard that's valid for 3 years or 2 years or 2 months. Our new system, our modernized system, will allow for placards to be printed individually at the counter at each location. We are asking that we remove the requirement for the permanent placards to have an expiration date, go to the word permanent, and only temporaries would require an expiration date. So I'll just walk very quickly through the bill. Again, on page 2, lines 5 through 7, it just says an expiration date and adds for a temporary removable placard or the word permanent for the permanent removable placard. Again, we would request the change in the effective date on this one. There would be no, to the January 1, 2026. There would be no impact to the constituents if we were able to put this in place before that, but we were more comfortable with the January 1 date.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Zimmerman? Yes, Representative Larson.
Is that moving the date again just to get the new system in place?
Ms. Zimmerman?
Chairman Brown, Representative Larson, yeah, yes, I'm just concerned with the July 1 date that we wouldn't be ready and then we wouldn't be able to make this happen in timely fashion.
Anything further, committee? Yes, Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, I think I missed just a small portion of that. How long is the temporary good for?
Chairman Brown, Representative Geringer, it's dependent on the individual, so they can be issued up to a period of 6 months and then reissued for another 6 months, but the treating physician determines the temporary license and the expiration date.
Seeing nothing further. Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Any other government agencies? Seeing none. No elected officials. Any public comment? All right, public comment is closed. Committee, moved by Nicholas, seconded by Geringer. Any questions? All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Representative Larson.
I would like to.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I'd like to consider an amendment on page 2, line 15, changing the date from July 1, 2025 to January 1, 2026.
Been moved, seconded by Nicholas. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. Question on the bill. Donna, can I please have you call roll on House Bill 27 as amended?
Can I clarify the amendment, please? It was, the amendment is on page 2, line 15, change the date from July 1, 2025 to January 1, 2026? Is that
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. This is a roll call vote on House Bill 27 as amended, disabled parking windshield placards revisions. Representative Banks.
Aye.
Representative Geringer.
Aye.
Representative Larson.
Aye.
Representative McCann. Representative Nicholas. Representative Posey. Representative Tarver,
Aye.
Representative Wiley, left an absentee vote of aye. Chairman Brown.
Aye.
We have 9 aye.
Representative McCann, you feel good on this one? All right, we'll put you and Representative Posey together on this one. That work for you? All right. Based off of the way that our general file is going, you may see this in like March 13th or 14th, but yeah. So with that, we have moved through the transportation side of the Bills Committee. I appreciate the due diligence on that, and we have got about 45 minutes left to work, we'll call it 40. House Bill 86. Representative Larson, please, if you wouldn't mind, we'll have you walk us through committee. This is going to be a little outside of our transportation purview. This is a pretty heavy lift for this committee as far as what the expertise in the areas that we see.
I think you just have to trust us.
I think, wow. I am happy though to see our state building department. Appreciate you guys coming in here. Get to see you guys quite a bit in select school. Now we get to see you over here. So Representative Larson, please, if you would walk us through the bill and the impetus behind the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. And we heard the good new chairman from Appropriations talk about the number of bills that they had inherited from the interim of the Appropriations Committee and the concern about the ability to get them heard during committee. That is not unusual for us to come with a dozen bills or so a year, and some of them are a little bit complex, not perhaps in subject matter, but just in length and number of statutes that they impact, this being one of them. We, Mr. Chairman, those of you that were here last year will recall we had House Bill 75, which was really this same bill, except for some penalties. We talked about major maintenance and routine maintenance and how if they weren't going to do routine maintenance, then they couldn't recapture all of the, remember that? Went over to the Senate. The Senate said, you know, we don't like the stick part. We don't like the penalty. So it died over there. We come back because there's really a need to conform our statutes on the construction side. And at the same time, our Department of Construction has been working to really do a statewide strategic planning. And the effort of all of this, Mr. Chairman, is that with the investment the state is making, not only on the school side, but you know, we built a new state hospital, the Life Resource Center. We're working on the girls' school now. We've got the skilled nursing facility in Basin, and we have the veterans home out there that may happen. So on the state side as well, we've invested billions of dollars in these assets. And how then, as Chairman, as you chaired that select school committee, how do we make sure that we are getting the complete life cycle out of these buildings and all of the components within the buildings? And that all comes back to major maintenance and routine maintenance and having a plan and on how to evaluate that. So what this bill does is it affects capital construction, including major maintenance, routine maintenance, and strategic planning. And who it benefits are the state agencies, state-owned building and facilities under the authority of the Department of Construction and the State Building Commission. So this building, all of A&I stuff, all of the agency-owned buildings, the health facility building, the prisons, all of those. The University of Wyoming Community College school districts, and there's going to be one subject in here that talks about public entities for the purpose of non-resident contracting for public works. And the tie there, Mr. Chairman, is in 2020 or 2019, we passed a series of bills, you'll recall, that really had been decades in the making to conform and bring together all of our construction and procurement statutes to conform them, because they were all over the place. And so if you were familiar working on the school side and the definitions there and how they bid for projects, and then you bid on something for the state side or Department of Construction, they could be a completely different animal. And so we're trying to get those and then Faraday, for example, professionals, engineers, surveyors, and architects were required to submit bids, which they don't. They provide a proposal and then they negotiate. We cleaned all of that up to reflect that type of stuff. So this is one little cleanup here is part of that, where we went into our resident contractor statutes. This bill has four major concepts. It codifies the budget bill provisions. So you'll recall, and for those of you that are new, we go through the budget bill in each agency, and then we have section 300s. And in the section 300s, we will attach an appropriation or something that impacts the budget. And in the section 300s, we had an area there that said major maintenance, which is defined in statute on the school side, applies to how we fund major maintenance on the state side. And that had to be in the section 300. That's always a little bit wonky that we're taking the green book. So this will take that out of the section 300 and codify it, as well as mandating the major maintenance formula and that the major maintenance funds don't automatically revert. We have to put that in the section 300 to say that they can hold on to those major maintenance funds and carry them over as they anticipate what those will be. So we put that into statute, and that won't have to be in the budget bill anymore. And the final one that we do there is every year in section 300s is we require the Department of Construction and Schools and University of Wyoming to do a reporting on their expenditures and commitments. And we put that requirement in here. We talk about definitions. We had three different terms for major maintenance, depending on where you were at. Routine maintenance, we had different, whether it was in the community college statutes or whether it was in the Department of Construction, vice versa. So we went through and we conformed. We brought all of those definitions, we put them in the Department of Construction. Then we reached back out to the University of Wyoming, A&I, the schools, and as we reference, for example, major maintenance or routine maintenance, it'll refer back to that statute in the Department of Construction to where they're all exactly the same. And so contractors or professionals bidding on that stuff know that the definition for the term is exactly through those, all of those statutes.
Representative Larson, I want to just stop you for just a second. I want to go just briefly into page 6, where we have the term capital renewal as a new term being brought in here. Is this a new term that we're going to have to get used to? Is this something that is different comparatively to what we have seen in the past? It looks like the language is very similar to that of major maintenance, but would like to kind of get a little bit of clarification on that.
Thank you. And this will help us as we walk through the bill, because if you look on page 5, where we go to 923001, that's the definitions on the home statute for the Department of Construction. So on capital renewal, we had capital renewal in a couple of places, but one of the things that we tried to do is you have capital construction, which is you have renewal, you have what we were trying to do there on the capital renewal is you'll have capital construction or major maintenance, and you do that, and it's generally tied to a building or to a component of a building. And several years ago at Western Wyoming in Rock Springs, we had to do an emergency where we had to redo all of the infrastructure, water, sewer, and electrical from the point of origin up into the campus. That wasn't clearly defined. And so when we talk about capital renewal, it's that stuff coming up to the building. It is a bit of a new refined definition. Capital renewal was in there, but it was a little wonky. And so this would be those utilities that you replace, water, sewer, that's not inside the building, that's coming out or leaving the building. A great, perhaps an example that I could use is Life Resource Center. They have their sewer system from the campus goes down to a grinding station and then comes back and this system then comes up to a point and ties into the city's sewer system and goes across the river to the sewer pond. That would be a capital renewal, that sewer system, okay? And then on the major building and facility repair, some of that will look familiar to you, Mr. Chairman, as you are familiar with the school. We brought it out of school, out of Department of Construction, as well as the community college, and because I think it was in the school where you're seeing major building and facility repair, and then the others, it was major maintenance, and we're saying that's the same thing. Okay, Mr. Chairman? So then, we go in and do some routine maintenance requirements. We talk about major maintenance, component maintenance, and to make sure that we got the complete life cycle out of those components, we're trying to put more emphasis on planning and doing routine maintenance, right? Change the oil so you don't have to replace the engine. Rotate the tires so you don't have to prematurely buy new tires. And so this, the entities will be required to develop and implement a proactive maintenance schedule, which includes planning and detailed record keeping, which really falls into line with what the director's doing on his statewide strategic planning as well. And it also requires a focus on preventing maintenance backlogs and ensuring that properties and components reach their full life cycle. And we see at times that you may have an entity for, let's say, a school district that maybe for whatever reason has a couple of pretty significant major maintenance requests. What they have in reserve and what is allocated through the formula is insufficient, causes a backlog, and we provide the ability for them in those unique situations to come in front of the building commission and apply for additional funds to make sure that they don't continue on with this backlog moving forward. The community colleges had a kind of this wonky phase-in of major maintenance funding. So if you build a new building at your community college, you would get a percentage that phase in and wouldn't get a full phase in for 7 years, which really then you've backlogged. And so we bring that in, we do away with that where they can get the major maintenance based on the square footage formula, so that when there is a major maintenance event, they've got the money there. We talked about that. Fundamental supplemental funding, we talked about that statewide. And then this is all key, and we'll hear a little bit more about that to when the director comes out about the statewide strategic planning, which will also include demolition. Demolition now is, you have to prepare for that as much as you do for building, and they're expensive. And so having the statewide strategic plan on how we approach these assets of the state to preserve them and to get the complete life cycle out of them is really the intent of the bill. So, Mr. Chairman, I really have explained the bill, and we talked about section 2, which was on pages 5, 6, 7, and 8, where we bring all the definitions into the Department of Construction. Okay, that's where they're at. Then in section 1, we're in the University of Wyoming, and a great example is if you would look at page 2, lines 9 and 10, capital construction project, we put the definition as referred to blank, the way we put it in the Department of Construction. So that, and you'll see that now in University of Wyoming, Community College, A&I, and every place where there's a capital construction, it'll all refer back to that one. Same on property, on all of those. On page 3, which is also a similar requirement that you'll see for community colleges and the schools, is we prioritize and make the CapCon list that the department has to review and submit to the Department of Construction, as well as the major maintenance list, and that they review, and getting that report in. That's a requirement that took a little bit of us to figure out, particularly school districts were a little concerned on that burden, and the director's done a good job of helping them do that. But frankly, we do that now. We make that request, you'll recall, every year to the State Building Commission on these major maintenance projects and what do we call, component projects that districts have. Mr. Chairman, we talked about 8, 9, 10. On page 11, one of the duties of the department is that each September of every other year, they're to submit to the State Building Commission a recommendation for funding for the immediate succeeding year for major maintenance for state property, community college, University of Wyoming. They're to plan for capital construction projects, which they do now, and project and land acquisitions. Yesterday, you heard a question come up from Representative Yin on, well, how can the building commissioner, how can the department purchase something before we appropriate it, and we give them that contingency fund, and we do that. In fact, I think we just closed on a property adjacent to the city of Riverton that we had been working on. Mr. Chairman, if we could, at the bottom of page 12, 923202 is where we bring the definitions into A&I for their buildings. The top of page 13 is this nuanced little deal that that we needed to fix, which is let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. This is where we allow public funds to be in the public funds to carry over A&I, to carry over their major maintenance stuff. So, and then on the bottom of page 13 is the State Building Commission and their requirements there to develop the rules to establish the development and implementation of maintenance schedules for each of those components over the next couple of pages. On page 17 on 16.6.101, we get into the definitions on the public property. Page 18 this is the nuance on 16.6.102, starting on line 6 down through line 20, and actually is the first part of that, and then from 22, 23, and page 1, and line 1 and 2 on the next page, is in our procurement statutes, there's a requirement based on the cost of the project when it requires a bid and when it doesn't require a bid. And if you look at A, it says, if a contract is let by a public entity for a public work, and this is cities, towns, counties, all public works, the contract shall be let if the advertisements for bids is not required to a resident of the state. So if I lived up in Gillette and it didn't require a bid, but I should negotiate that with the contractor who is a resident of the states. Provided, this is the new language, provided that the services required are not offered by any known resident of the state, the public entity may let the contract to a non-resident. So if this entity, this public entity in Gillette's looking for a swimming pool contractor to build a new swimming pool, and there's not one in the state, then he can go out of state or to repair. So let's say it doesn't require a bid, has to repair a swimming pool. And the closest one is in North Dakota. He can get that. And the problem we run into, and it was brought to us by the airport in Rock Springs, is, okay, if there's not one in the state and I still have to use the state contract, state resident, I'll go over here to Representative Banks, who will then find an out-of-state firm, get it, tack on his, and it just ups the cost. And so that's what this is intending to resolve, is to not increase the costs of these public entities. Then the other thing is if an emergency arises, a flood, a snowstorm, an earthquake, or a road giving way, where the public entity can waive any applicable requirement to this section requiring resident contractors, if it's for the health, welfare, and safety of the public. An example we had, and I think it was the good director for the Department of Construction, when there was a mudslide on the Snake River, and need to get it fixed fast. And I think that contractor had equipment sitting very close, it's just across the state line though. But that type of waiver to get the road open is the intent of that.
Representative Larson, just a quick question for you, going back up on to lines 13 through 16, the new language there, that my only, page 18, sorry.
Yep.
Same page that we've been talking about, is offered by any known resident of the state. Seems like that would make a lot of sense, but I can also tend to find where, oh, I didn't know that they were there. And so they just went off on that, because if I'm living in Rock Springs and there's a known resident in Sheridan, but I don't know Sheridan, and I don't know that they're out there, is there a reason why we utilize that language of any known resident?
For the very reason you brought up. And how do we verify for sure? And if they went out and got somebody from out of state and on the swimming pool repair, and there's one in Evanston, now, what's the penalty? And these are for bids that don't require, these are for contracts that don't require bids, so they're not a high dollar thing.
Right.
And so we're just trying to give a little flexibility for the public entity, as they know they want to use residents, they want to use the local people, and
Okay.
but I don't know how well I explained that, but we're just trying to take a volume and chill out a little bit on how tight and prescriptive we want it to be on them.
Okay. Representative Larson, we have got about 15 minutes before we gavel in. My question to you is, would you like to continue walking through the bill? You've still got about half of the bill left to go. A lot of it looks conforming, but
It is.
I would like to ask your opinion on whether you'd like to save the rest of this until next meeting, or if you want to continue this for another 10 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, at your discretion, I would suggest to you that the remainder of the bill is conforming. However, on page 31, I would like to show you an amendment that we could do, that we need to do as we looked at schools. Shelby, or Mrs. Carlson, sorry, Shelby, will come up and give the rationale behind it. But as we've reviewed this language over 2 years, a lot of times each time we find a little bit, but where we, on line 1, where we talk about failed component, well, how do you upgrade a failed component? You'd upgrade a poor component in it, so just changing the language to where it made sense. And then,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we'll
certainly.
change failed to
Representative
poor
Nicholas, come
in
on
there
through.
is what what we'll propose. And then down on line 7 and 8, we would say submitted under this paragraph shall be conditioned on the school district amounts available. So we're not asking them to expend 50%. The language that's in there talks about they have to expend 50% before of the balance of their major maintenance funds, which works for Cheyenne or maybe Fremont County, some of those districts. But if you're a poor county, you may
Mineral
only have
deficient.
$2,000
Mineral deficient.
there.
county.
And so we take that requirement out of there, so.
You're taking the whole requirement?
Yeah, we would take, what page is that, 31?
31.
We would take, starting on line 10, after replacement, put a period and delete the rest of that new language. So with that, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
please.
Representative Nicholas.
Going back to page 18, when you're talking about on the requirements for a in-state contractor, are you just talking about the preference, or are there requirements where you have to use an in-state contractor?
Say
Representative
that,
Larson.
Mr. Chairman, please say that again.
So
Representative.
with regards to use of a state contractor, are there certain situations where you have to use a state contractor if there is a state contractor?
The language of this indicates that, again, two things: for a contract that requires a bid and a contract that doesn't require a bid, has to go to a state contractor and they have to be within 5%. You can bid it out to the world.
That's what I, yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
but
hey,
it's that
gentlemen.
5%, but it's the 5% preference.
Yeah, that's, so we're all
Gentlemen.
talking about is the 5%.
Representative Nicholas. Through the chair,
Mr.
please.
Chairman,
Through the chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Hold on, Mr. Chairman, one more. Mr. Chairman, I think. I missed
Thank you. I'm the chairman, not the director.
that. Donna,
Just try to please everything through the chairman, please.
I
Thank you.
apologize.
Thank you. Representative Nicholas, did you want to have a clarifying question, or are you good? That worked? Thank you. Okay.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't know, if you want to work the bill, but I'm hoping we have enough time that maybe Director McComey and Mrs. Carlson can come up and clean up whatever havoc I've created.
Well, I guess I will look to the director and Ms. Carlson. We've got 7 minutes until I'm going to gavel us out of here. Choice is yours. If you think you want to try to squeeze it in 7 minutes, or if you want to tell us to wait, you're more than welcome to tell us to wait. Looks like they want to try to squeeze it in and not be back here on Tuesday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dell, Shelby, if you guys wouldn't mind, please introducing yourselves for the record. This committee is full of new faces.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for State Construction Department.
Shelby Carlson, I'm the School Facilities Division Administrator for the State Construction Department.
And Mr. Chairman, it's great to be back before the Transportation Committee. I used to spend most of my time here for about 15 years. And so it's kind of an unusual coming from a JAC bill over to this, but I'm glad to be here.
I think both of you did there for a while, so yeah, appreciate you guys being back here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is one amendment we'd also like to talk about, and that's on page 12. And it's some language change there. So we come down to line 12 on page 12, and it says capital construction projects and routine maintenance. We also need to include major maintenance in there. So it would read capital construction projects, comma, major maintenance, and then and routine maintenance. And then down on line 13, at the end of line 13, after property, put a comma. On line 14, take out the word and. And then after the University of Wyoming property, put and school district property. And school district property. So take the comma out after, or the period out after University of Wyoming property.
Del, what I'll ask is if you can work with Representative Larson between now and next Tuesday to get an LSO drafted amendment to make sure that when we do this, it's a lot easier for our secretary to just plug that straight in and we can take that as a standing committee amendment.
And Mr. Chairman, that's all I have unless there's questions from the committee.
Can I follow up on your comment?
Please.
Can we make the amendments now? And then we can have the LSO draft it so that don't have to come back and we can pass the bill as right now.
Committee, I will bring that to your guys' pleasure. If you guys feel comfortable working the bill quickly, that's totally your call. This is a very large bill. However, it is a conforming bill is what I'll call it. Really kind of a cleanup bill. So your pleasure. We need to do public comment first, and I do know that I have at least the contractors here. So if you guys are all good and we have no more questions, we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment then. I do know that we have one online. Ms. Little, if you want to come forward, we'll take your testimony first. And then I believe I have Mr. Brubaker online if you can. Oh, he's not here any longer. Okay. And Ms. Defoe. Thank you guys both, thank you ladies for both being here. Please introduce yourself for the record and let us know what you got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Kelly Little with the Associated General Contractors. As time is short, I will just leave this pretty brief. We support this bill. Particularly, we support the long-term planning initiative that the State Construction Department is hoping to initiate. So we would be really supportive of that. It would make our contractors pretty happy to be able to plan resources quite a ways into the future as they work with the state. The other thing I want to mention just really quickly is that the projects that don't go to bid that need to be let to an in-state contractor, we are comfortable with those two caveats. If there's not a known contractor in the state and the emergency language, we'd prefer that not go any further than those two caveats though. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Little. Appreciate that clarification from your side. Committee, any questions for the contractors? Seeing none. Ms. Defoe?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jessie Defoe, and I'm here on behalf of the Wyoming Construction Coalition today. I believe that we have very similar testimony, so just to make sure that you know that we're also in support of this. We've been following it closely over the interim and appreciate all the work that took place previously. The strategic planning is a huge part as we help develop a workforce, plan out crews, different ways so that the business can be forecasted would be absolutely a huge benefit to the state of Wyoming. So anything we can do to help support this or answer questions, we're happy to.
Committee, any questions for the Construction Coalition with Ms. Defoe? Seeing none. Thank you so much. I just have one quick question for Representative Larson, and it's more of just the fact that unfortunately we lost the director. Does this include YDOT buildings? As we're going through some of the discussion, and the reason I'm bringing that up is as I've been sitting on this committee for as long as I can remember, we've had and I think this director would have a very good understanding of where I'm coming from.
So, Mr. Chairman, when you go in the statutes on public entities and for resident bids, those statutes apply as long as federal funds aren't part of that. So on the horizontal landscape, when we look at preference particularly, we get, we can't require that because of the federal dollars. But on YDOT and Game and Fish, when they go out to bid, those requirements apply just like they would anyplace else.
Perfect. That's what I needed to hear.
Even though they're commissions.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Donna has copies of the amendments.
Of everything? Okay. Committee, we'll go ahead and close public comment. What's your pleasure? Moved by Nicholas, seconded by Geringer.
Move the amendments as presented.
Okay. Donna, do you feel comfortable with that? I'd like to make sure that you are set up and ready to go there.
Chairman, if I may,
You may not anymore.
May I defer to your vice chairman?
You may not.
Three strikes.
Representative Larson.
So on the First Amendment, we changed that failed to pour. We clean that up and get rid of that 50%. And on the second one, I think is on page 12. Remind me what we done there.
Page 12 was the
Added in major
major.
Added in major maintenance and school
district
districts properties, right?
Yep.
And the one on page 3.
And then page 31. was the
31
other
with, we added pour and that stuff.
one. Okay. Donna, do you feel good? You got those over there?
I'll talk with you after the meeting. How's that?
Okay. And I'll have Representative Larson stick around as well to make sure that we get this all tied up. So the motion has been moved Need a second? Seconded by Representative Geringer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. Question on the bill. Donna, can you please call roll on House Bill 86 as amended?
Roll call vote on House Bill 86 as amended, Public Property and Buildings Amendments. Representative Banks?
Aye.
Representative Geringer?
Aye.
Representative Larson?
Aye.
Representative McCann? Representative Nicholas? Representative Posey? Representative Tarver?
Aye.
Representative Wiley, left an absentee vote of aye. Chairman Brown?
Aye.
Chairman Brown, just a quick comment. So all the work done on this bill has been for 2 years plus, has been all basically in the good Representative Larson's lap. He's taken this on as kind of his own personal pet project, and he's worked his damn tail off on it. So I just want to acknowledge,
It's gone.
see, he has no tail.
It's gone.
And great job.
And that's recorded forever and in perpetuity, so I am so happy for that. I echo those sentiments, not only these past 2 years, but actually going back even further than that. Going in past 3 to 4 years, he has worked really, really hard on updating these construction statutes and making sure that everything works well. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate that. Also thank the department. John, good to see you. I see you have a counterpart that I haven't been introduced to, but welcome to the Transportation Committee. Appreciate all the work you guys do. With that committee, we are adjourned. Representative Larson, you'll take that bill?
I will, and Dave Webb, whom you may or may not know with Department of Construction, done a ton of, Muddy Gap guy, right? And has done a ton of work for the Department of Corrections and now is helping us with a bunch of other stuff, so great
Awesome.
guy.
We're adjourned. Thank you.